that the GOP is trying to turn America into Putin's Russia. Let me explain. Donald Trump saying that he didn't lose the election or that he won the election, it was stolen from him, and therefore we should not trust our election systems. We should not trust the foundation of democracy, which is elections. This is not just a sore loser. I mean, yes, Donald Trump is a sore loser. He's been a sore loser his whole life. But it's not just that. And that's not why the Republican Party is embracing him in his big lie. The reason why the Republican Party is embracing him in his big lie, why white supremacists and right-wing billionaires are trying to reform America, is because they do not want a democracy. It really comes right down to this. Trump's refusal to acknowledge his election loss is dangerous because elections are how democracies hold their leaders accountable. What you are seeing right now from Russia is what happens when a leader goes 20 years in power with no accountability. And we've seen this around the world, where autocrats take power, typically through elections in democracies, and then go nuts. Keep in mind, Hitler was first appointed chancellor, but then he was elected. Mussolini was elected in 1924, substantial win. This is how it happens. People get inside democracies, autocrats, and take them over and destroy them as democracies. And one of the main ways they do it is by claiming that the election systems are rigged, and therefore they've got to fix it. And, this is what's going on right now. For example, the Republican Party. Every single Republican in the Senate voted to block the John Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. And the Freedom to Vote Act was so milquetoast that Joe Manchin thought he was going to get 10 Republicans to vote for it. They are now changing election laws in multiple red states so they can alter the outcome of elections that don't go their way, completely ignoring the will of the voters. A recent Supreme Court decision written entirely by right-wing justices greenlit Republican plans. This was the Ohio decision. Greenlit Republican plans to purge millions of largely Democratic voters from the voting rolls. And that's happening right now. We may see in this election between now and 2024, we may see as many as 20 million Americans purged off the voting rolls. Republicans are making it so hard to vote that in Texas, as many as 30% of people applying to be registered to vote or to receive a mail-in ballot, as much as 30% of them are being rejected. A year ago, the rejection rate was 1%. What changed? Their new anti-democracy law. This is how autocrats operate. They hate democracy, so they seize it. Since the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013 in their Shelby County decision and then endorsed partisan gerrymandering in 2019, when they said, oh, yeah, you can't gerrymander by race, but you sure can by politics, no problem. So if that area, which happens to be largely black, is also largely Democratic, well, you can gerrymander the hell out of it. Again, a 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court, nothing but the right-wing crackpots, saying that instead of voters picking their politicians, politicians can pick their voters, no problem. And, of course, they are embracing Putinism and Trumpism, which increasingly are the same thing, in their efforts to rewrite history, in their efforts to embrace white supremacy and white nationalism. And we saw this weekend at the CPAC conference. Their efforts to create billionaire oligarchs via tax cuts and then have those billionaire oligarchs recycle some of that money back to these right-wing politicians. And their efforts to turn LGBTQ plus people into pariahs. They attack public schools, just like Putin does. They ban books, just like Putin does. They promote white supremacist conference and pass laws like Florida's recent Don't Say Gay law. The Republican Party, in short, is trying to turn America into Putin's Russia, with everything from book bans to rigged elections to denigrating democracy itself. Robert Reich, oh yeah, that's Hartman, a wackadoodle lefty talk show host. Robert Reich is the former labor secretary for the United States during the Bill Clinton administration. He is not Fidel Castro. He is not Thom Hartmann. He's a very respectable Democrat. And he's got a great Substack newsletter, by the way. He wrote this morning, quote, "The Trump-led Republican Party does not openly support Putin, but the GOP's animus toward democracy is expressed in ways familiar to Putin and other autocrats." Why does Putin talk about Russian blood and soil? In other words, white nationalism. Why does he harass and demonize LGBT people? Why does he maintain tight control over his schools and his media? Why does he rig Russian elections? Because the majority of people in Russia wouldn't go along with it if Russia was to function as a real democracy. And this is the same anti-small d democratic reflex, the anti-democracy reflex with the GOP. And by the way, it's not new. George W. and it has done incredible damage to America in the past. George W. Bush lost the election in 2000 by 500,000 votes. His brother rigged the election in Florida by throwing 80,000 African Americans before the election. But then the Supreme Court of Florida said, "Hey, we've got to recount this vote because it says that Bush won by only 537 votes. We need to double check it." And so Bush gets his buddy or his daddy gets his buddies on the Supreme Court, 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court, to say, "Oh no, Florida, stop, ignore the Supreme Court. We're preempting." Then a year later, November 12, 2001, the New York Times writes, because they actually counted all the ballots. If all the ballots are under any of 7 single standards and combined with the results of an example 1. So Bush, being an illegitimate president, needs a war. He gives us. Jeb Bush and 5 conservatives on the Supreme Court moved to America a huge step toward, with George W. Bush lying, creating a nationwide police agency in the Department of Homeland Security, something Americans have always resisted, and pushing through the Patriot Act, all while overseeing Big Brother kinds of abuses like Ed Snowden and other whistleblowers have revealed. That damaged America. And then Donald Trump put the final nail in the coffin of American democracy, or his attempt to anyway. Or tried to, and if a half a dozen heroic Republicans, people like Brad Raffensperger, who is busy purging the votes of black people in Georgia, but hey, at least he's standing up for something resembling democracy, hadn't stopped him. And then at CPAC this weekend, you got members of the U.S. House of Representatives from both Georgia and Arizona addressing a white supremacist conference where the host set the conference up with a rant about how, you know what our secret sauce is? Our secret sauce is these young white men. And by the way, let's have a hand for Putin. Putin, yay! Putin, yay! This is what they were doing at this AFPAC conference. It's kind of parallel to CPAC, happens just down the street. This is crazy stuff. By the way, this authoritarianism, this authoritarian streak is not new in America. I've got over at HartmannReport.com, you can see in my article for today, not only have I embedded the stuff from AFPAC, of this guy saying this, but also this PBS 7-minute film. It's called A Night at the Garden. And it's about 1939 when 20,000 white men showed up at Madison Square Garden wearing swastikas on their arms to give the Hitler salute. And now we've got Zelensky of Ukraine, who's Jewish, by the way, in the face of all these, I don't get it. Lefties saying that oh, it's a bunch of Nazis in Ukraine. Come on, their president is Jewish. His grandfather was the only survivor of 4 brothers who were taken to the concentration camps by Hitler. 3 of his uncles died in the Holocaust. Vladimir Zelensky, or Volodymyr. But as I said, democracies are rarely taken down from the outside. They're usually taken down from the inside. We're seeing this happening in Hungary with Viktor Orban, with Modi in India, with Duterte in the Philippines, with Bolsonaro in Brazil. The rise of the strongman. And Donald Trump was there cheering every single one of them on. So is Germany right that this is a Zeitenwende, that this is a turning point, that this is a new era in the world? And how's it going to shake out? The other concern, and there was a great op-ed in the Financial Times this morning, their swamp notes about this. You know, is this going to end up pushing Russia closer to China? Or will China be so horrified by it that they back away from Putin, in which case probably there will be an internal revolt in Russia that will take down the Putin administration? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not rooting for any of those outcomes because I think every single one of them comes with huge and disastrous consequences. I'm hopeful that Putin can simply be chastised. By the way, they just broke the first meetings in Belarus between Russia and Ukraine, peace talks, and made no, to the best of my knowledge, no major announcements. The official word is that both sides are going back to their respective countries for discussions with their leaders. So we'll see how this shakes out. But the bottom line for me is that here in the United States, I mean, even Mitt Romney, Adam Kinzinger, and Liz Cheney couldn't bring themselves to vote for democracy, for the Freedom to Vote Act. White supremacy, oligarchy, and the hatred of democracy have been with us forever, and it's a crisis right now in America.